The framing of the psukim, the verses from prophets, actually takes us out of the more general understanding of God as king and more specifically looking at the time in the future when God will be king and what needs to happen in order for that to take place. So whereas Rosh Hashanah is the moment where we do crown God as king, as we do every year, there is also a sort of future time vision of like the ultimate Rosh Hashanah in which God becomes the ultimate king and the other human kings are put back into their place. And you can see this in the verse that we're going to look at to start off. There's sort of an if-then statement. When the Moshi'im, the saviors, the ones who are doing the Yeshua, go up to Har Tzion to judge Har Esav, that's when God becomes king. God's melucha happens when the Moshi'im go up Lishpot Har Esav to judge the mountain of Esav. And the Midrashim really pick up on this and sort of play it out, that there's it's not just that God becomes king, but God becomes king when the enemies are defeated, when the evildoers in the world have been conquered. So we get a sort of the classic evildoer is Paro, Pharaoh in Egypt, and we'll start there with the Midrashim. The Ikabda b'Pharaoh, God says about Pharaoh that God will harden Pharaoh's heart. The Midrash says, when God punishes the wicked, that's how God becomes great in the world. Actually, probably referring to the verse in Ezekiel where God is God becomes great after the final battle where the evil folks are conquered. And the proof text for this is our verse. Mahu Omer, and then afterwards, Vaital Adonai Amlucha. So God's kingship is the result of Esav being conquered. I'm going to look at, if you remember a few days ago, we looked at the understanding that Yaakov, there's no Avin, Lohibit Avin b'Yaakov. There's nothing wrong with, no sin in Yaakov, nothing untoward with Yaakov. But Yaakov is a guy who seems to, not always be telling the truth. So here we have a poignant scene where Yaakov says to Esav after they reconcile, and if you sort of remember this from the Torah, I always think of it as like this sad moment where Yaakov says, you go ahead to Har Seir and I'll meet you there. Like, you go first, we'll be there in a couple days, and then we can sort of live happily ever after. That's the verse from Genesis 33. Let my Lord Esav go on ahead of his servant, i.e. me, Yaakov, while I travel slowly, Le'iti, at the pace of the cattle before me and the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord Esav in Seir. So there's this idea that Yaakov is sort of saying, you go ahead and we'll catch up. But perhaps Yaakov is understanding this is just going to be the ultimate separation from Esav. So the Midrash notices this and says, but nevertheless, Yaakov promises that he's going to meet up in Har Seir. So Rabbi Abahu says, we've searched all over the Bible. Chizarnu akol hamikra v'lo matzinu shalach Yaakov etzel Esav l'Har Seir miyamav. We looked all over the Bible. We never found that Jacob actually went and fulfilled this promise and went to Har Seir to follow Esav. Is it possible that Jacob, the truthful one, was tricking Esav, Meramebo? Is it possible that Jacob was sort of acting out his name as Yakbeni Zepamayim, you've tricked me? No, rather, when is Yaakov coming to Har Seir? In the future. Va'alu Moshim Bar Tzion lishpot et Har Esav. Oh, that's what Yaakov meant when Yaakov said, I'll catch up with you in a little bit. What he meant was that's the moment when there'll be sort of the ultimate judgment and everything will be restored back to the way it should be. This sort of reconciled brothers in the pshat of the text of Breshit then turns into Yaakov and Esav are sort of the ultimate enemies, and Yaakov is only going to follow Esav to Har Seir, to the sort of the dwelling place of Esav, when he ends up conquering him. Again, this verse is sort of looking to God's kingship as the result of evildoers being conquered. We'll look a little bit more. Eit HaZamir Higia from Shir HaShirim. The time of pruning, HaZamir, time of pruning has come. the Midrash again sees this as like the ultimate end of evil. The time has come for evil ones to be broken. The time has come for the Babylonians to be destroyed. The time has come for the holy sanctuary to be rebuilt, as it says, Va'alu Moshim b'Har Tzion. Har Tzion here meaning the Mikdash, like the ability to go up on Mount Zion is also connected to the ability to rebuild the temple and to destroy the evildoers. A parable. What I like about this parable is sort of displays some of God's vulnerability. A parable. This is like a king who rules and his kingdom stands. Okay, when a king is king, everything seems good with the kingdom. But when he got sick, his kingdom does not stand. When the king is weak or the king is physically ill, then something happens to the kingdom. Thus said the Holy Blessed One, in exile, which is like being sick, right? Begalut, kmo cholek, kivyachol, ein malchuto malchut kayemet. There is this idea that when we're in exile, i.e., when the king is sick, if you could even say such a thing, as it were, God's kingship is not a kingship that stands. So when is God king? Imatai ani melech, only when the exile and its kingdom, that is to say the rulers in exile, once they pass from the world, then I become king again. So we sort of have this vision of the existence that we're living in right now, where God is not fully king, where the evildoers are ruling the world, is, even if we declare God king on Rosh Hashanah, that's not the ultimate end of the story. The only ultimate end of the story happens when the final kingship is crowned, when the rulers in exile are diminished and God stands in as king. So we've moved here from this sort of individual act or even collective act of God being king over Israel to God being king over the whole world, and that's also going to be part of the pasuk that we will look at. Let's save, so we don't rush it through. Let's save the last pasuk of the Nevi'im tomorrow. So we'll look at Zechariah tomorrow. And today I'll just leave us with this image of when we ask God to be king, it's not just that God is the king for us, like Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shamayim, that we're accepting God's kingship right now, but rather it's a kingship that indicates the ultimate peace and end of evildoers ruling the world, the end of exile and the restoration of God to God's true place, and the whole world coming together in the way it should be. That's another vision of Rosh Hashanah, and that's a strong vision that we get from these psukim from Nevi'im, from the prophets, in this section of Malchuyot. Okay, we'll tune in tomorrow for Zechariah and move our way to Shema Yisrael. Wishing everybody a wonderful good morning.